There's two kinds of dumb in the world that I ain't dealing with too well these days. This dumb and this dumb. Politics isn't really about getting what you want. It's more like getting a pot of boiled hot dog water when you ordered a democracy cocktail. The problem is, your waiter forgets that it's well within your rights to at least ask for a gin and tonic. Or in other words, the bare minimum. On today's Shed Talk, we're looking at a void of critical thinking. What is harm reduction? 2 words. Harm, something bad. Reduction, to decrease something. To decrease something bad. Simple, really. Apparently not. I've been seeing a lot of supposedly far-left people say that the Dems and the Republicans are basically the same, that there isn't really a choice, or there's no lesser of two evils. I truly understand where you're coming from and your deep frustration with the two-party system, and especially with the laziness of the Democrats, but you're wrong. Here's some good things that Biden did that Trump would not do, or in many cases, would have taken a big dumpy all over. He took the pandemic seriously, attempted to cancel student debt but was blocked by Republicans. He supported Ukraine against Russian aggression. He did the American Rescue Plan, which included the expanded child tax credit, expanded earned income tax credit, extended increased unemployment insurance, more stimulus checks, provided small business loans, and lowered health insurance premiums. He also did the Inflation Reduction Act, which included Medicare's ability to negotiate prescription drug prices, funding for the IRS, which was able to get back over $1 billion from millionaire tax credits. It cut out corporate tax loopholes, extended the Affordable Care Act, and did massive amounts of work to help the climate. What about good things that Trump did? I suppose he did try to audit the Defense Department, so that's kind of cool, I guess. But this stark contrast between Trump and Biden isn't enough for some people. I'll stop voting for Democrats when they stop giving me that sweet bowl of dog water that we call a relatively broken and ineffective democracy. At least I'm not parched. It sucks. I know. I hate genocide too, but you know what I hate more? Genocide plus annexation of the West Bank, plus tax cuts for the rich, plus cutting social programs, plus destroying the administrative state, plus deporting millions of immigrants, plus harsher crackdowns on protests and free speech, plus a trans genocide, plus a conservative Supreme Court, plus potentially completely losing our democracy. However, when the Democrat response to people asking not to support genocide is, what? That's 4:30 on a Friday levels of productive.
You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
I'm trying to make a case for you here, but you're spilling my damn gin and tonic on the way to the table. I get being frustrated, but let's not strawman an anti-genocide movement on live TV, please. Voting in this election is like a trolley problem. Imagine there are 2 tracks, but if you pull the lever to the Dem track, you avoid a bunch of really bad stuff. Unfortunately, in either case, Palestine is still getting run over. It is important to note that the Dem track is a little bit longer, giving some hope that someone can step in and help Palestine out. I don't think anyone is stupid enough to want all these people to die. Therefore, I'm sure some of our anti-Democrat friends will say that this is an invalid problem. Let's break down some of their possible arguments. 1. This lever doesn't actually do anything. The Republicans and Democrats are no different, causing the same amount of harm. I've done all I can to prove that wrong. If you still don't think so, rewatch the first part of this video until your brain cells have a revolution and rise up against your oppressive stupidity. We love infighting. Others worry that things will keep playing out the same way if we vote for the Dems. Unfortunately, this is somewhat of a possibility, but let's take a look at the past few elections. When Clinton lost, we got Trump, and the Overton window did a little dance to the right. For those who aren't terminally online like me, the Overton window basically represents the ideas that are acceptable in a society at a given time. So when this boyo went crashing over to the right under Trump, the moderate Dems became so spooked by the idea of Bernie, it was like they were watching reruns of Casper's Scare School. With Biden popping some much-needed quaaludes into the right-wing onslaught, we've upgraded to a much more progressive ticket with Harris and Walz. Now the moderates are so chill that they could go with Alvin and the boys to meet Frankenstein because they are not scared at all. On to the stupid shit. Some might suggest there is some advantage to having Trump elected. Maybe people will be less complacent and be more radicalized. In that case, why wouldn't you vote for Trump? This is what we call accelerationism. And here's Noam Chomsky to tell you why that doesn't work.
I interviewed Slavoj Žižek. On this show recently, he said, in a kind of Maoist revolutionary terms, he said, Trump would shake up the system and could end up being a positive force in terms of undermining the status quo. Does he have a point?
A terrible point. That was the same point that people like him said about Hitler in the early 30s.
Revolution is not an answer. If you think Trump winning will cause people to rise up and overturn the system, you need to step outside and talk to some regular people. The last point is a moral issue with voting for someone like Harris, who has played a role in the genocide in Gaza. But there are more things going on in the world than just Gaza. Purity testing on this is only going to lead to a big L. Purity testing is a rigid standard that someone is held to. For example, in the case of the uncommitted campaign, if they don't get a ceasefire, they won't vote. Let me be clear. I'm not against the uncommitted movement, especially in the primary. It may even be one of the reasons that Harris said this.
What has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating.
It may have also swayed the Democratic establishment to pick someone like Tim Walz for Harris's VP instead of Josh Shapiro, who has compared pro-Palestine protesters to the KKK. But it's also important to think about this for a second. Sometimes you're in line at the coffee shop and you're like, I'll have the 8-ounce latte today instead of the 16, because you have a mild eating disorder. But also, because if you do that 6 times, you can afford another latte. In this economy, incremental change is ass. But progress has to come before purity, or we won't even have enough to afford over-roasted black coffee. Like, what about women's reproductive rights, or climate change? Don't get me wrong, when Harris tacks on stuff about the hostages, it kind of makes me mad. Of course the hostages should be returned, but this isn't a great look when there are thousands of Palestinians who are effectively hostages in Israel being tortured on livestream. Harris could make an easy slam dunk and call for the return of these Palestinians as well, or make any basic statement about human rights. But instead, she looks at Israel and goes,
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Unfortunately, I don't know when we're going to get that gin and tonic. But Harris is the next step closer. I like you guys, but why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Let's not make our job pushing for a ceasefire harder. Don't allow people's social safety nets to disappear so they're too busy trying to make money so they can feed little Timmy and they can't make it to the rally. To sum up, we've got to treat our service workers nicely. Because guess what? If we don't vote for Harris, we ain't ever getting that gin and tonic.